So, I mean, before we start anything, how are you doing?
Doing well, man.
Good,
You?
good. I'm doing good. Um, there's a lot going on. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm very, very grateful and things are going well. It's just a matter of my mindset in the midst of a lot going on. And that's actually one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight. There's, I think, two things. Oh, somebody just sent me a message. But yeah, do you mind if we like get into it, I
No,
guess?
jump right in.
Okay. So there's two things that are sort of on my mind. Let me see if I can just say them out loud now so that we can go through them one at a time. One is this thought of, I was just talking to my girlfriend about it. This thought that because I feel nervous to do something, or because I feel uncomfortable about doing something, or even because I don't want to do something, that means I have to do it. Because that's been a mindset that I've had because my thought is like, okay, well, I want to grow. So that means that if I feel uncomfortable about going to an event because I feel like kind of tired, well, that means I should go because I'm just trying to use an excuse and be selfish and prioritize myself, which that could be true. But what my girlfriend was saying is like, well, that's not really healthy because when are you going to get a break? If your reason for doing things is because not all the time, but if some of the time your reason for doing things is simply because you don't want to do them or because they're uncomfortable, then that can get to a point where that becomes unhealthy potentially. Now, someone like David Goggins, I don't know if you know David, do you know David Goggins? Someone like
Yes.
David Goggins would be like, well, that's sort of the way you live your life to remove the weakness in you. And that's one side of the spectrum. And the other side of the spectrum is, well, I feel this way. And so that must be my body trying to tell me something. And there's nothing wrong with not going to an event because I don't feel up to it. I just need to, take care of myself tonight. So those are sort of the two ends of the spectrum. And what I find is, well, what I have learned from another mentor of mine is the principle of making decisions based off of this thing that I heard, which is, are you nervous and excited for this particular thing? So the way I heard it described by him, and I know that this is a lot here, so tell me if you need me to pause or slow down, because we established both sides of the spectrum. And then another thing I heard is, if you're excited for something, that's great. You should probably do it. If you're excited to do it, why not? There's probably no downside. But it might not be the most meaningful thing in the world. If I'm excited to go get ice cream with my girlfriend, that's very meaningful for the context of our relationship. And I'm excited to do that. But that is like the act of eating ice cream in and of itself is not something that is going to further grow me as a human being, right? And then on the other end, um, maybe you're nervous for something. And there's this thought of, oh, well, I'm nervous, so I should do this because it makes me nervous and that would make me grow. But what I heard from this other mentor is, well, if you're just nervous, but you're not also excited, then you're probably just going to be miserable. So that's sort of a guide that I've learned that I've forgotten at times and sort of failed to implement. And I guess there's things that I have, just to get into, maybe it's overthinking territory, but I have used the excuse of just being nervous to not do something when in reality, maybe I should have done it. Does that make sense? So I hear
Yep.
this principle and then I'm like, okay, well, so if I'm only nervous for something, then I shouldn't do it. Okay, well, I'm only nervous for this thing. And in reality, it's something that I should do, but then I justify not doing it because, oh, well, I feel nervous and I don't know that I'm really that excited. And so I'll probably just hold off on it. And so, then you get into justification and whatnot. So I guess my question in the midst of all of this is like, I guess like, how do we how do we discern this stuff to maintain a few things to maintain a state of like health and not just being miserable,
Right.
um, and also to grow, right? Because we don't want to just be stagnant. We want to challenge ourselves to improve. But also, and I think for me, the most important thing is to, um, how do I say this? Not feel this sense of like almost guilt or shame for not doing something. Because sometimes
Right.
just because there's an opportunity, and we talked about this in the thing about making decisions, but sometimes because there's an opportunity to go to this event, it's like, oh, well, I should go because there's going to be people there that I know and it would be valuable. But it's like there might be something else I got to do that's valuable. And if I don't, but realistically, I could go to this other thing. But if I don't really feel like it, or it's possible, but it's just really inconvenient, then there's this feeling of like, oh, well, I could have made it work if I really tried. And so now I feel bad about it. And now I feel like I should have really taken that opportunity and it would have helped me grow and it would have pushed me out of my comfort zone a little bit. And now I feel like I'm stunting my own growth by my own overthinking or borderline cowardice.
Yep.
So I think I'll leave it at that because I've talked quite a bit.
Okay. So basically, I think what you said several different ways is which feeling should I follow? And I would say you shouldn't follow your feelings. Um, and
Oh
so
man.
I'm not picking on anybody, but I'm just saying whether you are or aren't excited, whether you do or don't dread something, um, things that you do based on how you feel will always lead you. Eventually, they're going to lead you into shame or guilt or pride, um, and
Interesting.
they're all obedient to fear. And so this, I mean, in some ways, I really like David Goggins,
Yeah, me
and
too.
this is going,
I read his
yeah,
book.
okay. I haven't read his book, but I see his clips, and this may sound outrageous, but um, David, in an effort to overcome fear, has become obedient to fear.
I can I
So
I can kind of see that. I understand where you're coming from with
yeah,
that.
like everything he does is a response to fear's demand. And so I don't know what's going on in his life. I don't know, I'm just so much I don't know. I don't, so I like some of the stuff he says, and I totally agree with we have to be willing to push through hard stuff,
Yeah.
but but we should never do things just because they're hard, and we should never not do things just because they're hard. You
Oh
know,
man, that just removes so much of what I thought out of the conversation completely.
yeah. So it's not. We should never do what we do because of how it feels. So
Ooh,
love is
okay.
not. Yeah.
I got to write something down. I'm so sorry to interrupt. This
No,
is
you're
profound.
fine.
Do you mind? Okay. I don't know if
Do
I
what
should
you got to
say
do.
this or write it down.
Doesn't matter.
Um, I'm so sorry. Okay, this is very profound though. Uh, okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I got it written down.
No, that's fine. So I was just going to say another way to think about it is, I mean, love should lead us to what we should and shouldn't do. Love is a why, it's not a what. And so, in other words, it's never anything that someone does that is love inherently. Um, it's why they do what
Yeah,
they do.
I'm still learning
That
this. I still haven't fully processed
yeah.
this.
So, but it'll help you if you just remember, Love is not a what, it's a why. Now, that doesn't free us from having to make hard decisions, and doesn't mean we're going to always make the right decisions. I mean, sometimes we should do something that's hard, that may not even be real fruitful, but why are we doing it? If the reason we're doing it is to train ourselves up, to be stronger, so that we're better prepared to love other people around us, so that we're more equipped to live a loving life, then there's nothing wrong with that. When it becomes wrong is whenever we do kind of like David does, where it's like, F everything, I'm a beast, I'm going to push through it, and I'm going to do whatever it takes, run as far as it takes, suffer as much as it takes, just to prove that I can.
Who's going to carry the boats? The boats and the logs.
Right. So anytime you do something hard, you're sacrificing something else. And so we just need to make sure that, we got to make sure that
that we're not sacrificing the wrong things, right?
Yeah, and that we don't. So the traps of fear. We talked about it just a little bit in our pod. We recorded a podcast today, but we talked a little bit about this today and that. But the traps of fear, and we've mentioned this before. I've mentioned to you before, are pride and passivity. So it's either this is something really hard to do, I'm afraid, so I'm not going to care, and I'm just not going to do it. I'm become this passive person that becomes obedient to hard things, which means devil put anything hard in front of me and he can count on me to fold. Or the other trap is it's really the same as that trap, but people's response to saying, hey, I'm not going to be passive, I'm not going to be weak, I'm not going to be a sissy, I'm not going to be all these things. So then they do the hard stuff just to prove they can, which is pride, and not even really realizing that in an effort to strangle fear out of their own lives, they become obedient to fear. They become the fear themselves. And so both of those are traps.
Okay.
So the answer to when we face fear is yes, it is to confront it, or to consider it, or to run to it, but not just to prove we can do it, and not to just see why we should cower, but to figure out what it really is. And then from there to go, hey, should I or shouldn't I? And if I'm going to, why am I going to? And if I'm not going to, why am I not going to? And the why is so the answer is not the what you're doing. The answer to your question that won't leave you with shame and guilt or pride is why you're doing it.
Okay. Question about that.
And you said something a while ago where you said, hey, I've done things that I knew that, or I've not done things that I knew I should have done just because they were hard. Well, what I wanted to say was, well, you just said you knew you should have done it. The reason you didn't do it was because it was hard. Well, that was obedience to fear, in that you knew you should have done it, but you didn't because it was hard. Or you knew you should. Sometimes it's the other way around. Like, I know I should confront this. I know I should face this fear, and I know I should approach it and see if I can sort the truth out of it, so that then I'll know what to do. But that's too hard.
And sorry, say that last part again. Say that last part one more time.
But that's too hard. Or so what I was saying was, like, sometimes we know we should face the fear.
Right.
We know we should confront it. We know we should go to it. And unfortunately, we got to sift it out and see what exactly is it, what is really going on here. Right. Because once we know what's really going on, then we kind of know what we should do, and we know why we should do what we should do. But that can be hard. It can be difficult.
That was going to be my question, basically. Isn't that like difficult and overwhelming to sift through all this in every decision we make all the time? Isn't that like exhausting?
Yeah. Well, they're not most decisions aren't. Most decisions are not. Even the hardest decisions are not normally that difficult. I mean, it's normally the hard part, I've said this before, is just going to it. But normally it's not complicated. It's like as soon as you look at it up close instead of from 100 yards, it's like you immediately know what you should do and why you should do it. Not always. Sometimes it's hard. the hard part is going, and then the other hard part is going, okay, well, if I accept responsibility for making the decision, then I become responsible. We think we become responsible for the outcome. And if the outcome isn't good, now it's my fault. Where had I just done nothing or just done what I was told or done what everybody else does, then it's if it doesn't work out, at least it's not my fault. So we want a free ride without having to face the fear. And unfortunately, that is the passive trap of fear that leads us to make a bunch of decisions with no information whatsoever that are easy. They're easy now and they become really hard later.
But
And so, but you got to ask why. And sometimes they are hard, and sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes you get it right. But that's kind of part of it. I got a train, or is that coming through loud and clear? So we might want to wait one second.
I only heard it for like a split second. It honestly, it sounds nostalgic. I remember when I used to go camping with my family, there was
Okay.
always a train that passed by.
Okay. Awesome.
So okay, that brings me to two things because that is all very, very interesting. So my next question is just to find a gauge of where
I'm going to interrupt one real quickly. I want to wrap that
sure,
up
sure,
before
sure,
we move on
sure.
from that
Go ahead.
real quickly. Just want to say this. The real problem with if we ever take this approach that if I feel this way, that means do it, and if I feel this way, that means don't do it, then and if we do that a few times and it's successful, then we will become totally subject to our feelings. And one thing Satan can do is lead us to having certain feelings and thoughts. Like he can give us thoughts. So like he can't control what we do, but if I'm going to do everything I feel or everything I think, then all of a sudden anything that pops into my head, I have to wonder, is this something I should do? And it just leads to mass confusion and chaos. So
are you saying that correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I didn't hear every word said there, but are you saying like obsessing over every thought that enters into our mind leads to mass
well,
confusion?
it doesn't start like that, but it's kind of
Right.
like, hey, so if I make my decision based on, hey, I feel anxious about this, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
At first, it's not that big a deal, but the more we make our decisions based on how anxious we
Then it
feel,
starts to define our life.
and we start going, hey, I think I feel anxious. Do I feel anxious? Do I feel really anxious? What am I worried about?
Oh.
And what's making me anxious? And so we just like, now I definitely feel anxious, and I'll do eventually I do nothing, or I become so obsessed with my feelings. I'm like a ship without a rudder. I'm just adrift at sea, and when a storm comes and the winds are blowing in 100 different directions, I'm going in 100 different directions. I don't know which way's up, which way's down, which way's forward, which way's backward, all those things.
Hmm.
So we can't the rudder on our ship, we can't guide our lives by our feelings. We should absolutely not ignore our feelings. I mean, sometimes our feelings are for a very legitimate reason, but we shouldn't ever just obey them either. So when I feel something, I go, okay, what was that and why did I feel that? And then I take a quick look, and almost always, I know, okay, it was nothing, or it's a temptation, it's fear, it's whatever, but it's kind of like a fire alarm. But sometimes, almost every time it's a false alarm, but we never just ignore it, because eventually one day it could be a legitimate alarm. So with feelings, different than your fire alarm is when it goes off, you go to it to turn it off, and you can check it and move on, but no obedience to the feelings at all. If the feelings actually,
Interesting.
if the feelings are important and they're actually pointing to truth, so that's our goal, is the truth. They're pointing to truth that do require action from us, no matter how hard it is, or or how easy it is, or how anxious we feel, or how excited we feel, without regard for any of that stuff. If our feelings lead us to some truth that are pointing in a direction we should definitely go, then we must be willing to go that direction. And in that case, our feelings may have led us to that decision. But if we'll allow our feelings to lead us to take another look, to flush out the truth is our rudder. It's the way we steer our ship. So things we decide we're going to do and not do. Sometimes the truth is not that clear, and we make wrong decisions. But we repent and we'll move on from that. So if we're following the truth, we may go off track sometimes, but ultimately we're on course at almost all times. If we follow our feelings, we're off course at almost all times. And it's like the more we follow them, the further off course we get. Just make sure don't ever say, hey, if I feel this way, I'm going to do that. Oh, no. No, I'm not. You do it for another reason.
Right. And I've been trying to learn that, because there's the whole thing of like, oh, well, oh, I don't feel like doing it today. It's like, I've learned that is, essentially irrelevant. If you're supposed to do the thing, you do the thing. Maybe there's an occurrence where like you really need to address something else first, because you literally can't focus because you're distracted by this feeling that you haven't allowed to make its way through your body and express itself. Sometimes there's like an emotion that's trapped, and you gotta, like, I don't know, talk to somebody or cry or go play a sport and just like express yourself before you can really sit down and be productive. I've experienced that.
Yeah,
But
there's nothing wrong with feeling your feelings. I'm not saying don't feel them either. I'm just saying the whole purpose of feeling your feelings, the whole purpose of exploring your feelings is not to see if your feelings or as if your feelings are some guide. The purpose of exploring them is to identify the truth. Now, in some very rare cases, might be like you go somewhere and you're somewhere and you're like, man, I don't feel good about this person at all.
Yeah.
But many times I've not felt good about someone at all, and they turn out to be great people.
Yeah.
So I won't treat them differently because of how I feel about them. I will just watch more closely, and I'll pay closer attention. I may put up more antennas, but ultimately I'll allow them to show me who they are. And they will. The truth always reveals itself, and then you see, and it's never too late to still make the right decision. But sometimes you have a feeling, and there's no way to find any truth whatsoever, and you're not sure what to do. So it's kind of like the fire alarm's going off. It's been going off for 30 minutes. I can't find any smoke, but I can't. There's a couple of rooms I can't get into that could be on fire. Then in that case, okay, I'm just going to go with my feelings here, and I'm going to go ahead and get out of the house till we can figure out what's going on. So if you
That's
can't,
a very I can't wait to. I want to like clip that or something. That was great.
Yeah. So, don't ignore your feelings and don't follow them at least until you've, eliminated every possible way to determine what the truth really is.
Can you say that one more time? Don't follow your feelings.
So don't ignore your feelings. Never ignore your feelings.
Right.
I mean, they're there. Your feelings are there for a reason.
Exactly.
What we need to know though is what the reason they're there.
Yes.
Because the reason may just be fear. Maybe a false alarm. It could be, there's so many reasons they could be there. So we don't ignore them. We want to know, why are those feelings there? But sometimes when we try to explore why the feelings are there, we come up with nothing. So if we can't come up with any reason why the feelings are there, but they're there and they're strong, then sometimes we can, get out of the potentially burning house long enough to allow the circumstances to reveal. Because the truth will always reveal itself. So our goal is to follow the truth, not our feelings. Usually it's not hard to reveal the truth, to just go and take a closer look, ask some questions, ask why, ask ourselves why. Why would we do this? Why wouldn't we do this? And then the truth will make itself known. But sometimes it won't make it. Sometimes it is hard to reveal the truth. And in those cases, then it may not be a bad idea to err on the side of your feelings, to go, you know what, I'm not sure. Not err on the side of my feelings like I'm going to take drastic actions, or change the direction of my life, or do really hard things even though I have no idea why I'm doing them. I mean, just drop the anchor or get out of the house that may be burning and you just don't know it because you feel it.
Right. Just
So in those
pause.
cases, yeah, yeah. So then you're still not going to follow your feelings, but you're not going to ignore them. So then it's like, you know what? Let me pull over on the side of the road here and give this thing a chance to reveal if it's burning or not. And then once the truth is revealed, the answer, then you will know what to do. You're not wondering anymore. Once the truth's revealed, it's like, okay, those other two doors were closed in the house. I couldn't get into them. The fire alarm was going off. I wasn't sure if they were on fire or not. So I got out. But as soon as I can, I want to go back in with a key and open the doors. And I may open them and go, wow, nothing was burning. I followed my feelings. I was wrong, but okay, it's fine. You know, I'll move on from here. Now I know what the truth is. I'm going to go with the truth. Or you may go back in there and you open one of the doors and the thing was on fire, and you did a good job following your feelings. So, but the truth is what we want to follow.
Wow. That, like, we just tapped into territory that I've never tapped into in any conversation in my life that I'm so grateful for. And I feel like I have so many questions that just opened up off of this, so I will prioritize them. Um, and this is like discussion stuff. Like, I'm not expecting you to
No, that's
have
fine.
the exact answer to some of this stuff. It's just like thoughts that came to me that I'm like, man, I've had this thought for so long. I've never articulated it in this depth before. Um, I think maybe I'll work based off of what we finished off with there. So you said, like, what if you can't really figure out why the feelings are there. You're not really sure exactly what's going on. And so you are not necessarily in obedience to fear. And so you just pause so that you can, figuratively speaking, step out of the house, find the key so that you can unlock the room so that you can get more information. So that makes sense. And I understand that. My thought is this, and this is maybe one of the deepest questions I've ever asked in my life because it feels so personal to me. I wonder if anyone else experiences this. Um, so what if I am in the midst of having to make a decision and I feel a certain way and it makes me feel in that state where I need to leave the house to go get the key, but in doing that, I am being passive and missing the opportunity to make the right decision. Does that make sense?
I think I
I don't
get
know
what
if
you're saying.
yeah,
So
I don't know if I articulate
yeah.
it.
So I think what you're saying is,
Maybe it's using pausing as an excuse or like as an opt-out of like just taking a step back from everything. Because I find that that's what I do. And like I've talked to my girlfriend about this, of it's like if I feel sort of paralyzed in decision making, I sort of figuratively step out of the house. I just sort of opt out of it all. I like go like, oh, what the heck? We're running out of time. That's crazy. Um, yeah, I find that when I don't know
well,
what to do, I just don't do anything. I just wait.
yeah. Okay. So if we have a habit of doing that, then what's happening is we're becoming anxious and we're trying to
That's the
hurry
story of
things.
my life.
Well, yeah, so love is patient, and which means we're not in a hurry. Now sometimes life presents circumstances that are not ideal, So I thought maybe what you meant was, hey, I feel a certain way. I'm not sure what the truth is. I'm not sure what to do, but I'm on a timeline here because I got to leave tomorrow if I'm going to do this. And if I don't
Right.
leave tomorrow, then I'm going to miss this.
Yes.
Um, those
This
are just,
is
man,
That's true
that's
as
just,
well. That's true as well.
yeah. So, I mean, if that's the case, that's just hard stuff. And the more you live, the more you learn. and you'll make better decisions. But I mean, I'm 56, I think 57, I can't remember. but still, if that happens to me next week, it's not much easier than it's ever been. So then I do my best to count the known cost and
Right.
to explore the known opportunities and why, not just like what do I have to gain, what do I have to lose, but what's the purpose of me gaining this? What would be the purpose or the reason for me losing this? Is it going to hurt someone else? Is there something, is there whatever,
Wow.
so
That's
there's hard decisions like that, and nobody's got a magic formula for that. Pray, like that's like legit.
yeah,
Pray,
yeah, yeah,
pray,
yeah.
pray, and then make the best decision you can. But whatever you do, don't just follow your feelings, because when we start following our feelings, everything will start leading itself to set itself up that way, so that eventually we're back to just following our feelings on everything. But if our belief system has us in a hurry all the time, where we're anxious, then we don't have the opportunity to wait for the truth to reveal itself, or we don't have the patience to wait for the truth to reveal itself. Then that means we have to guess, or we have to come up with some whimsical way of just saying, hey, when I feel this way, I do this. When I feel that way, I do that, which is just a fancy way of saying I'm guessing. Just seems more responsible because I'm doing something I feel instead of just totally guessing, but it's really just guessing.
Isn't that what
So,
decision making is, though? It's your best guess. Like I was just
no,
listening to,
no.
because I was just listening to a master class from, are you familiar with Jocko Willink?
I think I've heard the name. Maybe Willie sounds.
Former military. He's been on a bunch of podcasts, probably in the same demographic as David Goggins. Wake up early, train hard type of stuff. Leadership, um, accountability. He's known for um, how freedom is truly found in discipline. That's sort of the statement that he's known for.
Okay, so tell me
To
this.
oversimplify.
Tell me what did he say when he says this leadership or a decision making is guessing? Guessing what?
So
Guessing what to do, or guessing what the outcome will be? Guessing.
uh,
I don't understand.
I'm assuming that would factor in both of those things, but he said decision making, if we really boil it down, since you don't know the outcome, because you can't physically predict the outcome, it's
Right.
based off of all the information that you have. Your decision is essentially your best guess at getting that outcome that you're aiming for. So, having worked in
Right.
the military, if he's going to have to make a strategic call in battle and say, like, hey, you two over here, you two over here, that's his best guess in that particular moment based off of the information he has. Something could go wrong. There could be somebody in a room that he wasn't expecting. That's not in his control. But what he was saying is making decisions is basically making your best guess. And when you realize that, then you don't have so much pride because you're not so attached to the outcome. You realize that you're just a human doing your best. And then you can adapt as you go. And as you learn more, you can change, which makes you more respectable and trustworthy as a leader. Like it was a master class on leadership, and I heard that. And the only reason I said that is because you said something about like about how if you said something like where it's if we're not being patient, then maybe we're guessing. Is that what you said? If we're not being patient, we're guessing. And
That's
then
right. If
my
we're not
question
willing to
is,
be, what I said was, if we aren't willing to be patient enough to allow the truth to reveal itself to us,
okay,
um, then we have to guess. And then I like to say this real quick on, I forget
huh?
the guy's name you said there, but I would say I fundamentally disagree. I think, based on what you just said, that I would say that I fundamentally disagree with his motive, or his, I don't know the right way to say this. I think what he's trying, in my opinion, what he's suggesting is that he's trying to have a controlled outcome. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I mean, I think
or
all of
control
us,
result?
I think all of us are trying to the best of our ability to control the result in some way, and that's why we make decisions the way that we do.
Okay, so I would say I'd love to talk to that guy,
Oh, I
because
would love to talk to him as well.
yeah, just because I would like to ask him. I would like to dig into why he thinks he has control over the results, because I would argue that if
I don't think he thinks that. I think he's just trying to do the best he can with what he has to get the best outcome possible. So that people, like aren't gonna
yeah,
die from a wrong decision and stuff.
okay, so but what I'm trying to say is that if we're doing what we're doing for a specific outcome, we're trying to maintain control, and that if that is our fundamental approach, then everything breaks down in the process. And that
I think I disagree with that.
okay,
Continue, but I think I disagree with that. But I want to
okay,
understand more of what you're saying.
all right. So what I'm saying is that the 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 proper way to approach anything is to know what the right thing to do is, and to do it with no regard for the outcome. We let the outcome take care of itself. So
Yes,
now,
okay, so
no,
I agree with you.
it's not that we don't desire that we're fruitful. It's not that we don't desire a good outcome. But if we are making our decisions based on what we believe is the best way to get to the best outcome, then we become our own guides,
So,
and we
okay,
are no longer open to the truth to guide and direct us, because we think we know what the right outcome is, but in the truly best outcome may not be anything that we desire at all, and that when we would never make a decision to lead us to the best outcome. So
so I understand what you're saying, and that makes sense. I think in the context, at least from what I heard from him, also just a heads up, we got a minute and a half, and I think this will automatically cut out. So if it does, I could send a new link if you want. Um, I mean, I think the goal is not just to control an outcome, but to do the right thing, which is what you're saying, to
yeah,
do
but you
the
can't
right
do
thing.
both. You can't do both.
But why would you do the right thing? Because well, I mean, you do the right thing to do the right thing, but part of doing the right thing is because
Well,
in doing the right thing, it leads to good. And so, for example, like the one example he used, and we got
mhm.
less than a minute, was like if there's like a terrorist that they need to neutralize. And so they do this invasion of a house, and there's like women in the hallway and children, and they don't even know if this is the right house and stuff. He's like, in a few seconds, I got to figure out like, okay, we're going to bring these women into this room to make sure that they're safe. We're going to protect these kids. We also need to check the stairs to make sure that there's not enemy soldiers there and stuff. So it's all trying to do the right thing for the most amount of people while making the best guess at what the right thing is, because it's possible that you lead these women to safety and there's a bomb in that room.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is, why are you there to begin with? That's what I'm
Well,
talking
then
about.
then we get into like, why are we at war? Why is there being that home invasion in the first place? Why is there war between this stuff? And
No, okay, all right. So instead of going all those directions, I'm saying, so then I would say, why are you in the military? I'm not suggesting you shouldn't
right,
be.
right,
Okay,
that's
I'm
like a
not
personal
suggesting that they
thing.
shouldn't be at that house either. Okay,
Right.
but if you boil everything down, there should be a fundamental purpose for the
Mm.
reason that we're doing what we are doing.
Everything
And
that we do.
that's right, everything. And
I mean,
if
maybe not.
we
Well,
go
yeah,
ahead.
sorry. Oh, well, I
So
was just gonna say
if we
maybe
get
not
that,
every single tiny thing, but
yeah, right, yeah. There's some things that essentially don't matter,
right, right.
but every significant thing. So if our fundamental purpose is in order, then it will lead us to all of the right decisions. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have to train and prepare for, I mean, the reason we train and prepare for all the different things we do or that they do to enter the room and who you're going to protect, who you're not going to protect, how you're going to go about doing it, everything that's involved in that, all the training, all of that stuff is essential. And there may be some guessing going on as far as, you know, is somebody going to be behind this door when I open it or not?
Right.
I mean, that kind of stuff, yes. But the overall guiding principle or purpose for everything we do should go all the way back to why we even took the oath and signed up to fight, or why we live our lives.
Yes.
Essentially, it goes back to why we live our lives. And so if we boil it
It's
back
a
down
very
to
good
that,
question.
simply stated, then the outcome is we may have a desired outcome, but we no longer do what we do controlled by the outcome. We're going to do what we do because we believe it's the right thing to do. And you say, well, what is the right thing and why you want to do the right thing? And I would say, I was trying to think, you know, that was a great question, by the way. So I think the right thing is best for everyone. And so not just best for me, not just best for you, it's best for everyone. So, so if that is our overall guiding principle, we are going to do that, even if we don't get the outcome that we desire. So then I hope I'm communicating this well.
Yeah, it just
Then
brings me more
our
questions. That's
decisions,
all.
if our decisions are based on the outcome we want, then they're disjointed and they're changing at all times because we are changing at all times. But if our decisions are based on our core principle and purpose, then we know what we are to do next, and it's easier to follow those, even if we miss the target, our target.
Wow, this is like stripping reality back to its fundamentals, which I feel like this ties back to actually the first question. I kind of want to lean into this. And if there's anything else that you want to, share on top of this, that's fine. I have 11 minutes left on here, like just from the timer that I set. And I think that if we lean into this, I think it's the most valuable of any of the things that I have written here. Um, Tying back to fear, because all of reality is essentially a battle between love and fear, right? In terms of like the decisions that we make, we're deciding between love and fear.
We're
And
gonna do one,
so,
yeah, ultimately one or the other, right?
yeah. And so I learned that from you. So thank you. That simplifies reality. Uh, so when we were talking about fear earlier, in terms of decision making, and why are we doing the things that we're doing, right? That's how you stripped it back to that, like, there's this indecision. Am I going to do this or am I going to do this? I'm nervous, I'm excited, whatever, I feel this way. And you're like, well, if you know why you are going to do something, um, essentially that's tied into like the truth reveals itself and whatnot. And so my thought is that, at least in my experience, I feel, maybe I shouldn't say feel, my observation of myself is it seems like many decisions that I make are not necessarily exactly in line with my purpose that God has for me in my life, but the desperation of having a purpose in my life. So in other words, what I have written here is justifying a sense of purpose. So it's like, and I heard this in a video recently where it was like this guy said he overworked his whole life and he never took time to appreciate the things that were truly valuable because he would just work and work and work to try to justify his existence and like try to be valuable to feel like he's um you know w goes back into these things that we've talked about, like feeling worthy of love, and you're valuable, you're play the role of the hero so that you can be deserving of love and all this type of stuff. It all connects. And so this is maybe one of the deepest questions I've ever asked, but how can we get out of the cycle of chasing or justifying a purpose in our lives that's almost self-defined, I guess? How can we get out of that and consistently step into God's purpose for our life that we have clarity in, that is solid? So, because you're saying that if we know what our purpose is, that guides all of our decisions, that in and of itself, if that's true, then that completely, like, then I want to mold my life to shape it around that truth.
Yeah.
Because what I have done is I have lived a life of anxiety, trying to micromanage every little thing I do, every decision I make. I have my schedule for the week, for every single day of the week, for the next months. I have like rough outlines of years to come. And the reason that I did this to begin with is because I, I do you mind if I just rant for like 30 seconds? This is a bit
No, go ahead.
personal, but okay. So if you can see on the wall behind me there, right here, that's my album cover from the last album I made. I decided to make an album because I wanted to prove to myself that I was capable of doing it. Maybe there's pride there. It also has made a very, very big impact on a lot of people. So there's, it's sort of a mix. That's why it's called dichotomy. Funny story. Um, After I completed that, right? I had finished school. I did that. I was working a job. I was then going to Colombia with my girlfriend for like 3 weeks. And I quit the job right before going to Colombia. I'm like, I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to let God lead me. I'm going to go deeper into music and stuff. Went to Colombia, come home. And for the first 2 weeks after being home, I had accomplished the thing that I set out to accomplish. I had gone on the trip that I was anticipating for months and months and months. I had quit my job. I was 19 years old. I am like in that moment, I was like completely free. And so for the first 2 weeks, what did I do? Of course, what else am I going to do other than just linger in this sense of hopelessness and despair and depression? So that's what I did for like 2 weeks. Talked to a mentor, and his advice was, Chris, write down like all the things that you want to do in your life and all the things that essentially that you believe God would want you to do in your life just right now. This doesn't need to be the final thing for your whole life, but just to get some direction back in your life, write down all these things. So I went to a Tim Hortons near my house and I wrote down all just random things I want to do. I want to take a train across Canada. I want to build a custom house in the future for my wife and children, whatever. And then from there, work backwards and go, what can I do in the next 3 months that puts me on this general trajectory? And then what can I do in the next week? What can I do today? And then that way I know that everything that I do today, if it's following that trajectory, it's leading towards something that I desire, that I believe is meaningful, that if I've factored it in my planning, that I believe God has for me as a plan for my life. And that way I have some peace knowing that I'm not just aimlessly going around my life and I'm in this direction. But what I still find in that is anxiety, is um, desperately trying to do all of those things so that I can then reach that goal, which then what am I going to do when I reach those goals?
Yeah. What if you fail?
Right. This is a very good
Yeah.
question because right now my thought is, well, if I fail, then I'm living subpar of my
Yeah.
potential.
Then you're gonna
And
miss your purpose. And then,
yeah, exactly.
or what if you achieve it all and it's empty? Because it will be, by the way.
Those are
So
both two questions that I don't like.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the questions we need to be asking, because that's where you flush the truth out. So what you're trying to do is create something that already exists and that you don't have the power to create. Chris, there's nothing you can do to give you purpose or remove your purpose. God gave you your purpose.
Wow, this is like making me emotional right now.
Yeah. So you cannot destroy your purpose, and you cannot create your purpose. Your purpose is not what. It's not what you do. It's your purpose is why you do it. Your purpose is to live a loving life. The power to live the loving life is found in you connecting to the vine, being grafted into the vine, who is love. That's Jesus. So this is why we can rest. Resting doesn't mean that we don't do anything, or that we're not motivated to do anything, or that we just sit around and sulk in our whatever victories we have, or or roll around in those, or sulk in our losses. It just means that that we're going to keep going, and our drive and our motive is love. We love because we are loved, and we're complete. We have purpose. We're whole. We're all the things that we're trying to do all of these things to fill ourselves up so that we feel like we have a purpose. All the things that we do to feel like we have a purpose have no purpose at all. They are not our purpose. It's why we're doing things that is our purpose. So God gave you a purpose. He created you with a purpose. It exists. You don't have to create your purpose. All the anxiety comes from, if we think our purpose is our responsibility, we're going to be filled with anxiety, because we're trying to do something that is impossible, that we don't even have the power to do. So we are destined to fail if we think we succeed. In other words, if we think that there's military helicopters coming over, man. They're all going to the fort over here. If that's drowning me out, but if we think that we succeed, like, so you write down the long list and you achieve all those things that you think are your purpose. At the end of achieving the long list, this happens to people all the time.
Right.
You're empty. There's no value in everything you achieved. So why is it that somebody can achieve so much, and after achieving so much, they all say the same thing? I got everything anybody could ever want. I like anything anybody ever would desire in their life. It's all at my disposal, and I'm totally empty. It's because they don't have their why right. They're trying to create what God already created them, what God created in them. You have a purpose. Your purpose is not found in yourself. Your purpose is found in loving other people, and loving God, and loving others. That's why Jesus said, love fulfills all the law and all the prophets. And this is love, that you love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. So you got to keep purpose where it's supposed to be. Your purpose is in your relationship with Christ, and then in how you love the people around you. That's your purpose. It's never in what you do. It's in why you do it. And that's so important, because sometimes what we do doesn't please other people. If it's loving, it's not even what they want. They may consider it judgmental or hateful or all kinds of things. But if we did it for their sake, truly, their judgment, their hate, all of those things don't leave us with shame. But if we're doing these things to them for our own purpose, then they leave us with guilt and shame.
That is very true. That is very, very true. And I've experienced that, so I know that is true.
So don't try to create what God has already created. And that is your purpose. It's the same way with the love. People love themselves because they believe the lie that they aren't loved.
Is it?
So you're trying to substitute God's love for you with your love for yourself. And you loving yourself keeps you from loving anyone else. So it's what we believe. It is what we believe. We have to believe the truth.
Do you
And
have
the
an
truth is
anvil in
God
that
created us
garage?
with a purpose. Huh?
Do you have an anvil in that garage? Because it feels like you're banging me on the head with one.
No.
Oh
But
man.
look, hey, this is what I'm saying. We got to get the fundamentals right. If we do, then from there things go out smoothly. Like his yoke is easy, his burden's light. Um, no, his burden's light, his yoke's easy. Anyway, it's not easy. It's not like we don't have fear. So when we do loving things, we sometimes often still feel afraid. We're just not being obedient to the fear we feel. So it doesn't mean it's easy. We
It's
still have to do
so
hard things.
easy to be obedient to fear. It's so easy though.
Right. It is easy.
Like so easy. Like I could just
Right.
live afraid for the rest of my life and
Well,
basically no, I'm not
yeah.
saying that I will, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
that like what I mean is like I could do enough uh, you know, things that um
It's easy at first.
that face
Yeah.
fear and that challenge me so that in the eyes of everyone I'm like, oh, look at him, he's so strong and he can persist through this stuff because the world just doesn't do this.
Yeah.
And like,
It's easy at first, Chris, but when we live in obedience to fear, it leads to massive, like there's no escaping the suffering. And suffering is not all a
okay,
bad
yeah,
thing,
I guess I wasn't thinking about that because I'm not going to let myself get back there. I've experienced that. I've been in that state of despair. I will never, oh, there's the alarm. Um, I will never, maybe I should put this in a different way, but from my perspective, I will never allow myself to get to that point again.
Yeah. And then that's what David Goggins is trying to touch on a little bit. I think he's like trying to say, hey, man, you got to do the hard stuff now so that it's easier later. But while
Which
you're
is
doing the
a
hard
fundamental
stuff,
principle that is decent,
yeah,
but
it is. But while you're doing those hard things is the most important thing.
if you realize that you are doing a hard thing that is actually good and it does have good fruit and it has positive outcome, but at the same time you realize that you were doing it for maybe the wrong reason, not entirely, but there's a bit of gray, like that doesn't necessarily mean that you should just cut it off and stop doing it altogether because it's also good. Like for example, if part of
No,
the
just get
reason
your
that
why right. Yeah.
yeah, because I'm thinking like my first thought was like, oh my gosh, have I been making music for the wrong reasons all along? Because I'm so like try to be so self-aware. And it's like, well, no, like it's not to some extent like, well, I mean, yes, like I want good things to come from it. I want doors to open and opportunities to
Sure.
come. And maybe there's like some selfishness here and there. And there has been songs in the past where I do it in a way to kind of show off. That's true. But in that same song, I voiced the fact that that's what I was doing.
Yeah,
But
but deep down, if we ask ourselves, then we can usually know and I understand we do it for everything you just said, but there is a core motive, a core belief, and a core reason why we're doing what we're doing. That's the one we got to get right. We don't have to get all the little stuff
and
perfectly
but
because
and is that
if
thing
we get
only
that one
fear or
wrong,
love?
yeah, essentially yes. Am I
Uh,
doing this? Am I doing this for me, or am I doing this for you? Is my life about me,
oh yeah.
or is my life about God and others? That is like the founding principle. What is my life about? And so if my life is about me, if that is my like concrete cinder block foundation,
Right.
every decision I make will be rooted in me. If I realize that my life is not about me, but it's about God and others, greatest commandment, that my purpose is not about me, it's about God and others, then every decision I make will be rooted in that foundation. Now, what out there we do all kinds of silly, selfish things, all that. None of that even I don't think that's even very relevant. It doesn't matter. We repent, whatever. But at the core, what are we rooted in? What do we believe? Are we grafted into the vine of who Christ is? His life was not about him. Or we're either going to be grafted into him, love, or we're going to be grafted into fear, disconnected from the vine. whichever one we're grafted in ultimately determines every decision we make, why we make them. And that reveals who we are and whether or not we fulfill the purpose that God had for our lives. It's not what we're doing.
Do you mind if I finish with one thing? It's just to
Sure.
voice it, just in case this gets posted and somebody has this thought. I guess the difficult thing that comes to my mind is like, because I've never thought about life in this context before, and it is kind of terrifying. Um,
Don't
and
overthink it.
okay, well,
Just
I'll
put
try not
Jesus
to.
first. Just put Jesus first. But go ahead. I mean, you can ask the question, but
I
in your
mean,
life, just put Jesus first.
I guess my thought is like, okay, so let's say there's things like opportunities that I have right now, things that are coming up very, very soon in the next uh 8 days.
Mm-hmm.
Opportunities like you are aware of, like performances and stuff. And um like obviously I'm scheduled to do them, I'm gonna do them. But like just the concept of there's something that I'm nervous for or afraid for, and maybe it's something that isn't really scheduled, and like I still have the choice of am I gonna do it or am I not gonna do it? Um the thing is as soon as this is my thought, if I make the shift into it's not about me, it's about God and others, then I immediately, if I put that in mind, well, then I immediately put myself into a fearful situation, which, because most of the things, or a lot of the things that we do that are for the best of others, a lot of that can be or will be sacrificial. Not necessarily everything. There's the gray line. We talked about this in another
Yeah,
podcast,
but all right, let me
but
interrupt you real quick. If it's truly best for others, it's also best for you. I
that's
mean,
true. But that doesn't mean it's
yeah.
enjoyable.
Huh?
That's true, but that doesn't mean it's enjoyable.
No, that's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
I mean, love will always cost us something,
I don't think
but
Jesus
never
was
more than.
smiling on the cross.
No, that's right. That's exactly right.
In fact, he was
No,
screaming and crying out in pain. Not
yeah,
like yeah, not in like a whiny way at all, but in like a deep, deep suffering, sweated tea or sweated blood.
that's right. That's
Like, and
exactly
to
right.
think that that could be what was best for
Yeah, but if
him
you, I
in
wonder
that
what the
moment.
suffering would have been like if he would have avoided that, and all of humanity would be in hell with no opportunity of escape or opportunity for salvation. I wonder what kind of suffering he'd be doing now by missing the cross. I'm talking about God here, so I don't want to. I'm gonna be careful about how you can address that at all. But he certainly didn't, and he went through the cross and he provided the way for us. So I'm just saying that love does bring suffering for a season and difficult, hard times for a season. But in your decisions, you're talking about you making the wrong decisions in the next 8 days can't possibly derail your purpose. God gave you your purpose. I mean, unless you just abandon God. If you're like, hey, you know what, in the next 8 days, I'm giving up on God and I'm gonna do it my way or whatever. But deciding whether you're going to do this or do that, or when you're going to do this and you're going to do that, it may take you off course a little bit or something, but it's not going to derail your purpose.
I've realized
And so
that
you
life,
have to rest. Your rest is found in knowing that my purpose is secure in Christ, not
but
in my
but
decisions.
but
As
that
long
doesn't
as
mean
you
I
think
don't
your
do
purpose
anything.
depends on you, go
But
ahead.
that doesn't mean that I don't do anything, which I know that that's true,
Oh,
but
that's right. No,
also,
it means the opposite.
yeah,
I'm not letting you off the hook. I'm putting you on the hook.
but then I
We're
feel
letting
like,
ourselves off the hook by saying, hey, I could control the environment, or I can control what happens, and do whatever. I'm putting you on the hook. I'm saying, hey, your purpose is to live a loving life, which means chrysalis. you know. So you got plenty of work to do and a greater motive to do it. Your 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 motivation should not be to be successful in music, although that would be wonderful and you would love for that to happen,
Right.
right? Um, your purpose is to use the gifts that God gave you for His kingdom,
Yeah.
for God and others.
That
And
that is
if
what I'm
you,
trying to do with it. So I'm
yeah,
glad about that.
right.
I don't.
So just keep reminding yourself. This isn't easy because we all like, oh man, I'm doing it God's way, and I'm trying to live selfless, and I'm trying to make selfless decisions, and I'm trying to do the right things. But hey, man, wouldn't it be awesome? And I mean, I'm in the boat with you. You know, we're all like that. There's nothing wrong with that. When it becomes wrong is whenever it's like, I know my why is clear. I should do this, but that's going to take me further away from what I want. And so I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to do this to get me what I want.
Right, as
And
opposed
so
to doing what's right.
that's right.
Hmm.
So you can't derail God's purpose for your life, what you decide to do next week, unless you decide to walk away from Him.
But my natural response is like, okay, well then if this is the case, I need to double down on all the things that I'm doing that are good, which is true. But
Well,
then also like, what
unless you
about
burn yourself out, then you can't do anything.
exactly? And so then
Yeah.
it's like, how do I rest? How do I take a night and just like relax? Like my girlfriend said something tonight, and I know that maybe the phrasing that I'm using is not going to quite line up with what you have said, but she's like, when's the last time you did something that's like quote unquote self-care? Now I know that when you hear that, you probably associate it with self-love and it's like
No,
backwards and
I
stuff.
don't. I don't.
Oh, okay.
Self care is not inherently selfish. It's why you
Oh.
care for yourself. You know, I mean, Jesus rested. I mean, if you're so self love is doing what I believe is best for me without regard for you. So if I'm caring for myself without regard for you, that's self love.
But this is the problem,
If
Kenny.
I'm caring for myself so that I can care for you, that's not self love, that's love. So if you're taking care of
Okay.
yourself so that you can fulfill God's purpose for your life, that's not, people call that self love. That's not self love. That's love. I mean, why are you doing it? But if you're taking care of yourself so that Chris can be good looking and handsome and the best and have all his stuff, then he's going to use everyone else along with taking care of himself or sacrifice everyone else for his own mission. And then he's going to
Right.
sink his own ship in the end. So, like I say, love is not what, it's why. So if you're caring for yourself so that you can take care of your family, it would be selfish of you to not care for yourself enough to be able to take care of your family. It would be prideful, you know. So self
Wow,
care is
this is
not
like,
inherently selfish.
yeah, I guess then it's just a matter of discerning where the line is and to what extent and how much rest do you really need? How much self-care do you really need?
Yeah, that's harder. Right,
Versus
right.
pushing through it, that whole sort of thing. Okay, so at least when you say that's harder, then I know that it's not this thing that's
It's a
just like
little
this.
harder. It can be harder sometimes, Chris, but people normally know exactly what they're. You know, if we ask ourselves why, we usually know why. You know what I mean? Like
Sometimes,
so, like if I
Kenny,
tell my wife,
sometimes I just
hey, I
wanna,
want to do
lay
that
down and
for you, but
relax.
I'm tired. It's really, you know, and but I know I could easily go do it,
Well,
you know,
yeah,
but I know, like
but
we usually know.
so that's true, but then my thought is like if it's okay, we gotta wrap this up.
Yeah, right.
Um, should I even say this? I'll let you decide. Would you like me to share anything else, or do you think we're getting too far?
That's totally up to you, man. I got a few more minutes.
Okay, okay. Um, so you said love is doing what's best for the other without regard for yourself, but sometimes you need like rest or you need self-care so that you are able to be there for other people. And then as you're saying, like if your wife is asking you to do something and you're like, oh, well, I'm tired, but you know you could do it, you do it. My next thought, and I'm probably overthinking it and dragging it out of proportion, but if we are to do what is best for the most amount of people as much as we can, and let's say whatever, like I have a following online And the one song that I released has hundreds upon hundreds of comments that I still have not responded to, of people in despair, people venting about like traumatic stuff. Some of them that I haven't read yet are maybe like suicidal and stuff. And so usually if I like go and I see that there's a comment that is like super in-depth and heavy and I don't have the capacity to answer it in that exact moment, I'm just like, whoa, I can't do this right now. I'm gonna have to wait. But then there's a backlog of hundreds. And so in my moment of rest where I'm like, okay, I'm tired of this thing and I'm justified I feel justified to rest because I accomplished this particular thing in a different area. Then in that moment of rest, I have this thought like, should I go and answer comments right now? Because what I'm realizing is that there is an endless amount of work to do for the rest of my life, and I will never achieve the work that I'm set out to do. In other
Right.
words, I will like, and I've said this, I have enough work to work for the rest of my life without stopping and still not accomplish everything.
Right.
And that is like, I think maybe that's one of the reasons why I try to impose my own purpose so that I can then, once I've achieved something, be like, okay, I did it. Now I can take a breath because I've done this thing.
Yeah.
And I don't just feel
Well,
so overwhelmed.
it's not your responsibility to save the world, right?
Right. This is true.
Just to make
Okay.
a
Yeah.
difference in the people that to make a difference in the lives of the people that you have the opportunity to reach and the capacity to reach.
But what if
So,
I have a lot of opportunities and a lot of capacity to do that?
well, if the opportunity presents itself and you have the resources to do it, and you're not going to sink your own ship in the process, why wouldn't you do it? But what you're telling me is essentially what you're saying to me is, hey, Kenny, I'm the captain of a 500 person ship, but there's 2,000 people drowning. Shouldn't I try to save them all? And I'm saying, well, if you try to save them all, you're not going to save any of them. You're all going to drown. And so you just, you know, you shouldn't. And we're talking about a ship here, but in our lives, if if we aren't rested, if we aren't spending time with Christ, then we don't have the eventually we won't have the capacity to help anyone. We'll come
Yeah.
undone on everyone.
That's very
So
true.
yeah, and
Experienced
so
that as well.
people will call that self care or self love, but that's not inherently self care or self love. It's like, why are you doing this that reveals who you love? So if I'm doing this, and this unfortunately what most people do once they get overwhelmed is they decide from now on it's me first. So I'm going to take care of me. And if I have enough left over, so like when my cup is full, if I have something I can't fit in my cup, I'll give you that. I'll give this other person that, but nobody else. It's like, and if you do anything that brings me below full, I'm going to put a boundary out there that says you can't get anywhere else, whatever the boundary is, so that I can keep my cup full and then give people my leftovers. That's what runs us, because we're not even a cup, we're a conduit. And so we should be busy about loving, but only so much can flow through us. So the love of God can flow through us, but only so much. We can only do so much. Same reason Jesus went away and rested, and we should rest knowing that God is in control. We aren't. If people don't depend on us; they depend on Him. And when we rest in that, then we actually, instead of doing things so that we look better by giving people the extra stuff we didn't need anyway, but then we feel really good about doing that, but then we feel empty. It's like we want to help in the capacity that we can help. And but we have to keep ourselves connected to the vine. So if we cut ourselves off from the vine so that we can go over there and feed people all the fruit on our branch, we're not going to get any more fruit. We have to stay connected to the vine while we move our way into our purpose. So,
Yeah. So
and
you
if
said
we're
don't.
staying connected to the vine so that we can love God and others, then our why is in the right place. That's not self-love, it's love. If we're staying connected to the vine just to get what we want from Jesus, to get our fruit, then that is self-love. and we think we're connecting ourselves to the vine, but in reality, we're disconnecting ourselves from the vine when it's for us.
Because then we're
You
just
did
gonna
all
get the
these
fruit and
things,
leave.
but I never knew you, huh?
Yeah, because then you're just waiting for the fruit, and as soon as you get it, you leave.
Yeah, and you're never in actually you wait for the fruit and it never comes, so you create your own, and it's fake, and then eventually people figure out it's fake, and then you come undone.
You know, I've realized after talking to you that it is so like maybe I shouldn't put it like this, but it's become so much easier to like read people and like see right through everybody's BS, my own included. Like as soon as I
Yeah,
started to understand this stuff, I can see so much more. I'm like, okay, that person is doing that out of fear. This person is doing this out of pride. Like I can just see it. It's just so obvious. And I'm like, wow, this person has 512,000 followers that praise this person, and everything that they're doing is just out of fear. And I'm like,
unfortunately, a
wow,
lot of
that's
times,
like, I'm like, that's crazy. And yet that is the standard. That person is the guru that everybody's following to learn more about life. And that is like the standard of what's good is attaining all these resources. And I'm like, this is this is actually crazy that we have not sat down to really strip this back to its core and ask why.
right? And it's not hard. I don't know why people don't dig a little deeper. Most people will ask why once, and then they don't go any further. So it's
Right.
like, so
You got to
you
be
need
like
to
a
ask,
toddler. Unless you become like a child,
right,
you will not inherit the kingdom
right.
of heaven.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I mean,
Why?
yeah. Yeah. So it's like, why did you do that? It's like, well, I did that to protect that person. Well, why did you want to protect that person? That's the next why we don't go to. So it's like, okay, why did you do that? I did that
Yeah.
to save that person. Well, why did you save that person? That's the next one. That's where
Mm.
nobody goes. Well, because now you're getting into our core beliefs. Well, I saved that person so I could be a hero. Well, guess what? That wasn't love. You
Also, we
know?
have 1 minute left.
Yeah. So yeah, we just need to keep asking more whys, but there's plenty there. Keep
Wow.
diving
Yeah,
deeper.
man, we go so in depth and we get so much answer, but I feel like we open up more doors and the doors keep opening more doors and more doors and more doors. Oh man, this is like beautiful and crazy and wow. Okay.
All right, man. It's good talking to you.
Kenny, thank you so much. You gave
Okay.
me a lot of pieces. I took some notes this time. Usually I don't take notes, but I took some notes this time and I'll probably
Yeah.
listen to this back. This is like crazy valuable.
Yeah. And rest in him, man. Your purpose is secure. Okay.
Thank
Same
you.
about that. All right. Okay.
Thank you, Kenny.
All right, buddy. See you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. God bless.
God bless you.